one today, but we begin this hour talking to a woman of great courage and conviction. She speaks out passionately for those who cannot help themselves. She is the First Lady of the Commonwealth and quite possibly the First Lady of our country. And it's a delight to see Kitty Dukakis. How are you, Kitty?
It's good to be with you,
It is good
Eileen.
to see you.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
I feel wonderful.
Everything's behind you now?
Everything's behind me.
Yeah?
I've got to still be sensible and listen to the doctors. But I physically feel wonderful.
I think a lot of us sat back and looked in amazement at you having surgery with such a short recuperation time prior to the convention, and I know in your heart hoping everything would go well, and thank God it did.
Yeah.
But there must have been some moments when you thought, can I do this, recovering from major surgery?
I just had such faith in the medical care that I received, in all of the healthcare workers, the doctors and nurses. And I had such great support from my husband and from my kids and from friends and staff. And I just knew that things were going to be all right. So much of that kind of recovery has to do with one's own attitude.
That's right. That's right. And you're a great example with
you.
that. The convention. I guess there probably wasn't a dry eye in the house for those that appreciate family and a sense of where we've all come from. But when Mike looked up at you and said the words, "I love you," and you were telling me this morning a lot of people have mentioned that.
Yes.
What were you feeling?
Just great joy. It was just such a thrilling time for all of us, especially for Michael and for myself and for the children. And I was just full of gratitude for what had happened, what was ahead of us. And I still feel that way.
Do you?
Yeah.
You were telling me about some of those working the floor in the media. You have to share that story.
Well,
I don't think she'll mind.
Natalie interviewed me the first night of the convention, my first interview at the convention, and she was in sneakers. And our glamorous Natalie just didn't look quite the same.
It's a grueling job on that convention floor.
Yeah, it is.
It is not easy.
It is, and she explained to me that she learned a lesson, I guess, in previous conventions, and she looked comfortable, but she looked ready to work.
And everybody was ready to work.
Right.
I'm wondering what was going on for the 3 or 4 days when Mike could not appear, and he was working on his speech. What was his attitude prior to that big night?
I think part of it was some frustration in not being able to leave the suite as much as I was going out for interviews and receptions and visiting delegations. And I'd say goodbye to him, and he'd stand at the door and say, "You're so lucky."
You felt imprisoned.
Go out a little bit.
Speaking of that, you have Secret Service around constantly now. Your life has obviously changed. You're in a fishbowl. How are you dealing with that?
I think we're adjusting quite well. They're wonderfully professional, very helpful, and I feel much more comfortable, in particular with Michael's security, now that he has it.
Yeah, it's very important to have
Right.
it in this sometimes crazy world. As you're traveling around the country, talk about the perceptions that you're gaining, especially when it comes to women. There must be a commonality that we all share in terms of issues and worries and problems.
There is everywhere, Eileen. There is in the South and in the West and the Midwest and in the Northeast. They talk about a gender gap between the Democrats and Republicans. There really is. And I think a great deal of that has to do with people responding to Michael's record of inclusion for women. And he's had a daycare policy that goes way back, that's one of the best and most creative in the country. He has appointed women to important positions, the only campaign in the history of this country where a woman has led that campaign. And the whole issue of fairness and hope in giving women, even those who have been on welfare for a long time, an opportunity is something that people, women in particular, all over this country are responding to, but men are too, because they benefit.
Absolutely. You are known as a woman who is not at all single issue. I mean, you've worked, you've had a career, you've had an office in the State House, which I know is something that in this state, the Commonwealth, is the norm. But you will take a lot of issues in your heart to the White House, won't you?
If we're fortunate enough to be there, yes. I would not be a single issue person. There are too many areas in which I want to be involved.
Does it worry you at all that you might be outspoken? I mean, we're looking at this rap that Nancy Reagan is getting now. Is the country ready for that?
I'm not sure, if they're ready or not ready. We're all different. We all have different interests, different personalities. And I would hope that in 1989, if Michael is elected and then is inaugurated, that our country would be accepting of somebody who had her own opinions and had strong feelings about particular issues. And I think that's what's so special about this country, Eileen, is that we are a country of differences, and that the richness of America is those differences.
It was interesting to watch you and B.A. Benson on Good Morning America this morning, and Joan London said it. She drew a comparison between you and Eleanor Roosevelt. Not since Eleanor Roosevelt might there be a woman who cares about so many issues. I thought that was very flattering.
It's a bit embarrassing. I have always looked up to Mrs. Roosevelt as a real model. When I was a senior in high school, along with one of my closest friends, who's still a friend, we were chosen to represent our high school, to listen to her at a forum, and it was one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. She touched me in a way that no other public person had. I was a 17-year-old at the time, and I still remember that speech.
Boy, and if you think about that, then you realize the kind of power that you have over people who listen to you. Power to
I see
inspire.
it as opportunity, as just extraordinary opportunity.
B.A. Benson, now you were telling me that she's really a delightful
Oh, she's
lady.
terrific. We're different generations. B.A.'s children are closer in age to Michael and myself than to the Bensons, and I think that's healthy. She's been an active senator's spouse and has led a very full life, and I can't imagine what it must have been like for B.A. when Michael made that phone call to her husband, and it's changed their lives.
When she thought everything was settled in.
Right, right.
But is she giving you pointers on being a grandmother?
We've talked about it. We've spent a lot of time talking about children. 2 of her grandchildren were in Atlanta, just lovely, lovely boy and girl.
Can you just not wait?
No, I can't
for Lisa
wait.
to have this
I've
baby?
already bought gifts for my grandchild. And Michael thinks I'm very silly, but he's also very excited.
Oh, you have to be. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something we all share,
Yeah,
being a grandmother.
right.
You had an experience where you were in the hospital with a young man that I've had a chance to meet, Hoot Pike from Cambodia, whose sister you reunited them, and they sat at your bedside in the hospital,
Yeah.
someone told me. What was that like?
Well, it was extraordinary because Mike and I and Sarum had not had an opportunity to really talk, and they were with me for about an hour and a half. And I started asking him questions about things that we had not had an opportunity to talk about before. And he is just charming. He has grown so much in the 3 years he's been in this country. He graduated with honors from Linfield High School. We talked about his senior prom. And at one point, he's going to Brandeis on a scholarship. At one point, I guess he hadn't seen any of the dormitory rooms, and he said to me, "Where am I going to put my clothes when I go to Brandeis?" I said, "They have closets here."
Isn't it amazing?
And he sent me a picture from his prom soon after we had met, and it's in our bedroom. He just looks so happy and so different from that sad-eyed, painfully thin young man. He's just terrific.
And there is so much that can be done on that issue, and it's one that I've learned a little about, and I share
You
with
have.
you. And maybe you'll up the ante on the compassion fatigue that I think everyone feels for that
Right.
part of the world. I think if you get into the White House, that might change. I thank you for the time,
Thank
Kitty.
you. It's been
and
wonderful to
take
be with
care
you.
of